Many people dismiss their trauma because it doesn't seem bad enough. They tell themselves it shouldn't have affected them the way it did. In this episode, we explore why trauma isn't defined by the event itself, but what your nervous system had to do internally to survive it. We talk about how survival responses forms. Certain parts of us stay activated long after the danger is past, and why minimizing your experience only deepens the wound. This conversation is for anyone who knows something impacted them, but still feels conflicted, embarrassed, or unsure whether they're allowed to call it trauma. My name is Michael Perry, and I'm joined today by Justin Gates, and this is the new Ashla Podcast. Hello and welcome to the new Ashla Podcast, home of shadow work and self-mastery. Today we're diving into trauma and how so many of us have this connotation of what trauma is. But trauma's not about the big events, the car accidents, losing people in our lives. It's about the situations we encountered in our life that fundamentally changed our perception of the world around us and how we show up in it.
I would definitely say it's also about the big events, but the things that we don't think are affecting us, those too have a big effect on us, because most of the things that affect us are things that we don't notice. So those definitely are more of it. You know, I mean, yeah, the bad car accident, the abuse, things like that, definitely still a valid reason to have trauma. But the point that we're going to be making today is that you don't just have to look out for these big things, which many of us don't ever experience, to be honest with you, right?
Yeah.
But it's a culmination of all these little things.
Well, it's crazy how we have these. There's just situations in our life where we have internal shifts of understanding or how we feel things are supposed to be. An example for me is I remember being in the car with my mom and my sister. It was my first day in middle school. It was horrible, but it was also my sister's first day in second grade. And my sister talked about her day, and when I went to talk about my day, my sister wanted to just keep going. And I internalized at that point that I should not have to talk about my day, that it's something that it's not important. I was told to quiet down, let my sister keep talking, and I internalized it. And it's a silly thing looking back, but it's still a fundamental shift that happened in me.
Yeah, I'm sure there's someone out there that's going to say, dude, really?
Yeah.
Right? Dude, really? And you know what? I probably was one of those people at one point. I'm sure I was. In fact, I'm just going to say I was, right?
Yeah.
Because I used to separate my spiritual path from this more psychological trauma trigger stuff. I used to keep them very separated from each other, right? And a lot of us out there do, especially these big tough guys. You know, us tough guys, where other people have had it worse than me. I've said that to you before.
Yeah.
I've said that in regards to Heather, right? We've had conversations. You know, my childhood was good compared to, right? So we get into this.
Yeah, you do.
Comparison stuff. And it's a really tough habit to break. It really is. Yeah. And it actually does damage to us, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We do that.
That's how I handled toxic positivity for so long. It was always, well, it could be worse. You know what? People have it so much worse than me. I got no right to complain about this. And again, I'm not saying this is all to complain, but to understand why we are the way we are.
Now, we get a lot of comments, and I won't pretend to know where these comments come from, right? People online have avatars. You know, they have a picture, there's, you know, whatever. I don't know who's actually behind the screen. But a lot of the comments that I get, well, is just suck it up. Stop being a crybaby. Stop doing this stuff, right? But this show, every episode has always been, and it will always be, no matter what topic we're talking about, is about being brutally honest and putting away that macho man crap. Because if you're listening right now and you're thinking to yourself, other people have had it worse, but why am I still affected in this way or that way, wherever it's being stored in your body? This is for you. If you've ever told yourself, I should be over this by now. So much time has passed, Michael. Why am I still affected, right? I should be over this. Or I'm being too sensitive. I'm just being too sensitive about it. Let little sis tell her story, right?
Yeah.
Or I'm making too big of a deal out of nothing. I hate to tell you, and this is why we said, yeah, the big things that happen to us are important, but it's these little things that add up, and they stack in the back of our minds. And they will start to create real world effects on us. We just had a guest on, Brent Phillips, who his arm literally went paralyzed from his subconscious blocks, stacking up. And it literally paralyzed his arm. That's extreme. I get it. But if something happens, then it's within the realm of possibility for all of us, right? So if you're listening to this and these questions have come up, I want you to keep listening, because we're going to talk about the things that are affecting you that you don't want to admit to others. But you're here with us. No judgment. We can't see you. It's all good, right? Keep listening, because I'm here to tell you, you're not exaggerating. You're not being dramatic. You're not sensitive. You're not being too sensitive. You're not weak, and you're certainly not broken. You adapted.
Yeah. And I think one important thing to point out at this point, too, is it's not about blame. All right? Bringing up this event about my sister. There's no blame towards my sister or my parents and how they handled it. It is just how this event occurred and how I internalized a lesson in it. I made a little agreement with myself on how the world operates.
And I've done that thing. As a parent, I've done exactly what happened to you. And if you'd asked me if I thought that was going to cause some kind of problem with one of my other children, I would have said, you're crazy. Stop being so dramatic.
Yeah.
Right? Because those things happen. When you have multiple children, everybody is fighting for that piece of attention.
Yeah.
And
it's like myself 2 years ago, I would have thought I was being dramatic, bringing this up as an issue. Like, that was me as a kid, and my parents just wanted my sister to go ahead and have her say.
Right.
But I look at the little impacts it's had in my life, how so many of my relationships have been one-sided conversation. Tell me all your problems, but I'm not going to tell you any of mine.
Right. Yeah. And again, hearing that one thing as a dad, that makes me think back to, oh my God, how many times did I do that? And I'm sure it was a lot, right? Because in the moment, I'm trying to teach them manners. I'm trying to teach them all these other things, right? That oftentimes clash because I don't know what's happening inside. I can't possibly know, especially if they don't know how to express that to me. Or if I'm telling them to be quiet, they can't express it to me, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, no blame here, no shame. It is what it is. There's an old Gen X phrase for you, Michael. It is what it is. But we adapted, and this is going to sound silly, but you learn to survive in those moments in the only way that's available to you. So what'd you do, Michael? You just...
Yep. I remember being a little kid and thinking in my head, if my parents care about how my day was, they'll ask me.
Yeah.
But instead of advocating for myself, I went with that mentality my whole childhood, which slowly ate at my self-worth, because then I never really got asked the question, how was your day? I was always a good kid. I never rebelled. I never acted out. So my parents were like, he's doing good.
Exactly.
I don't need to worry about him.
Right.
Yeah, I see how it happened.
Yeah.
And also it was due to my own mental model of, if they care, they'll ask. I made that agreement with myself.
Yeah.
And that's how I've carried that throughout my life.
When we put safety and security and survival in front of our wants, especially the ones we don't know, especially the things we don't need, or we don't know that we need at the moment, we learn how to approach things differently. We learn how to guard ourselves from any further pain, right?
Yeah.
We learn how to endure, right? Endure through it. And again, this is not a flaw. You're being faithful to life in the grander picture here, because survival equals life for us.
Yeah. Well, I think even then, another important aspect, not just survival, maintaining connection. I think a lot of these paradigm shifts we have as kids, where we internalize something wrong or we go through something, the reason we adapted the way we did is we wanted to stay in connection. The kid who's always lashing out learned, if I lash out, I get attention. And that carries into their adult life, where it's just like, make a scene about it, they're going to treat my problems as a priority. Or someone who's passive, like, don't bring up my problems. I don't have to worry about being judged, scorned, or neglected. So I can stay in connection if I don't have an issue.
Yeah, yeah. I've shared this on the show before, but I'll share it again in case you're new. And if you are, thank you for joining us. I had spent 4.5 years in the Army. Lots of things there could have given me some problems. And if you ask Heather, it did. I don't remember. I'm sleeping, right, when this stuff happens. I was a first responder for a long time. I've seen a lot of crazy stuff. None of that ever bothered me. Truly, consciously, never bothered me. Unconsciously, a whole different story. Consciously, it never bothered me, though. I never felt anywhere in my body, wow, this is hard, this is heavy, this is whatever. I could go on the most horrific scene that you could think, that you can imagine. And if it's been 4 or 5 hours into my shift, I need to eat. I'm hungry. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It sounds crazy, but it was when I broke my damn leg slipping on frickin' ice that I had episodes of anxiety, PTSD, all these very clinical things, and I had absolutely no idea what to do with it because in my mind, dude, you just broke your leg. Get over it. They'll throw a splint on it, a cast, they'll set it. You'll be fine. This is not the 1800s. You're not going to die from this, right?
Yeah.
But somewhere inside of me said, "Oh my God," and started freaking out. I had nightmares for months and months and months, as if I was being murdered, right? I would have these bad mood swings. They were bad. I'm not even sure how my marriage survived, to be absolutely honest with you. Because I would go from here down to rock bottom in a second, which was completely out of character for me. All because it broke my leg. And what I struggled with the most was I couldn't understand why this was affecting me this way. When I had seen and experienced all these super horrific things, right? It didn't make any damn sense to me. So back to kind of the main point today. It's not what happened is important. I get it. But it's not as important as to how you internalized it. And that's something that we're going to be talking about today because we are in uncharted territory inside of ourselves. I told Brent in the interview, I said, it just blows my mind how we know more about space than we do the oceans.
Right?
Oceans are on the earth that we live in, and we know more about that up there than we do the oceans on earth, but we know even less about our subconscious, even less than the ocean, which isn't very much, right? So I get it. If you're out there listening, you're saying, dude, come on. I get it. Trust me, I get it from the deepest rooted levels inside of me. I get it. But it happened to me and it changed the way I looked at everything because then I stopped once I accepted that this is happening, now I got to deal with it, right?
Yeah.
If I want to keep my relationships, if I want to stay sane sometimes, it felt like I was going crazy, dude. Right?
Oh, I can believe it.
Right. And it wasn't even about the pain. It wasn't even about any of that stuff. It was just however it hit me inside. And I didn't have any control over that. I was just along for the ride. So I get it. But stick with us, please. Because healing ourselves and healing the things we don't even know where there's any maladies, right?
Yeah.
It does not begin by judging those things, those patterns. It begins by meeting them in relationship. And I think that's where we're going to go today. And I hope by the end of this episode, you're going to feel like, okay, I understand what they're saying now because it gets very complicated, especially if we don't know ourselves very well. And very few of us do know ourselves very well. And that's not a judgment. That is just a fact, right?
Yeah. Oh, it blew my mind. When I got into this work, I thought I knew myself inside and out. And it was just like, oh, wow. I have literally been avoiding the mirror for my whole life. Like,
yeah.
So when it comes down to this and trauma, this being an internal experience, I think one important thing to touch on is we get lost in this mentality of a scorecard. Again, that whole people have it worse than we do, right?
And we like to keep score for others too, by the way. This is where it gets like, oh, come on, man. You know what I mean?
Crap, especially as Scorpios.
We do.
It's one of our greatest weaknesses.
Kind of judgy. We're not as judgy as Virgos, though. I think they're the most judgy. No offense to any Virgos out there. Some of my favorite people are Virgos, so I love you. But
I think one thing with this is it's like one thing that has always perplexed me so much is how kids can grow up in a family dynamic and come out completely different, which realistically comes down to they had completely different parents than the other kid.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people don't realize that the way the parents treat one kid is completely different to how they treat another kid. They adapt, they figure out what works. Often it's a very messy process, which is human nature. This is not a pointing a finger moment, but parents are doing the best they can with the tools they have. Yeah. But people can experience the exact same event and come away with a completely different perspective of what happened or how it impacted.
Well, there's tons of layers here. Tons.
Yeah.
And many of them invisible. Your great-grandparents had an effect on your grandparents. Your grandparents had an effect on your parents. Your parents had their own crap to deal with. And by the way, if you have more than one child, which I can attest to, they are all completely different people. They may look similar, right? But they are completely different people. You know, the range of children for me was my oldest is literally exactly 10 years older than my youngest. There's a lot of different Justins in between there. A lot of different Heathers. Even their grandparents. There's a lot of different versions of them in those 10 years. And continues to change. My grandkids certainly look at me a lot differently than my children did. Because I'm way more chill. We were just talking about this the other day. Annabella and I and Heather, we were just kind of sitting around talking about this. How I was a drill sergeant. I was literally a drill sergeant in my house for years, 4 years. My kids are good kids. They live very good, happy, productive lives. I'm very proud of them all. But there was a cost to that because, you know, we don't express ourselves in ways that go against the greater good. We do, you know what I'm saying? Just as an example. Yeah. And I was very much a drill sergeant. My grandkids, they never met Drill Sergeant Papa. Not the way my kids did. So.
Yep. Well, and it's crazy the impact. I mean, so I took child psychology just a few semesters ago because it was something that I thought was really important being a dad myself. Yeah. And it's learning about when we have kids, you have these different types of parenting styles, and you have like the authoritative and where they're just in the kid's face, like, you do as I say, not as I do. The authoritarian, which is like, I have strict rules you follow, and I will love you through it, whether you mess up or not, but I hold a strict structure for you. And then you have permissive parents who just enable and enable and enable. And then you have absent parents that just aren't even there.
When I say I was a drill sergeant, Dad, what I mean is I was just super reactive, right? I was super reactive to things, which is not good, which I know now shows a lot of trauma in me, right?
Well, and I think the amount of people that do go through that as parents, like, no one realizes what they're biting off until they're in the thick of it when it comes to parenting. This is a 18-year, 24-hour commitment.
It's longer than that. My oldest will be 31 this year. And my youngest is 21 this year, so it never ends. Don't let them lie to you. It never until you're dead. Until you're dead. But you know, I never really kind of came at things, you know, by the book type stuff, right? But I was very reactive. I was very reactive in my life. It just extended into my house for a long time. I'd say it probably took me 15 years to finally get to the point where I could learn to respond instead of react. And of course, my older kids got a different dad than my youngest two did. And I can't look back and go, wow, I was a piece of crap. I just have to go, wow, I grew a lot in those years.
Yeah.
I grew a lot. I healed a lot, right?
Well, and again, when we look at those moments, again, we did the best job we could with the tools we had.
Right. But we do like to keep score, and keeping score is not great, right? We can look at our story and we'll say, well, I wasn't, and again, call myself out. This is something that I've done to Heather, for example. Well, I wasn't abused like you, or I didn't grow up in that kind of environment where this or that, or I don't remember going through anything that extreme type of thing. But pain does not work that way. It just doesn't. There is no measuring stick. Your heart is not calculating percentages, Michael, about, oh my God, okay, let's compare, and okay, that percentage is higher, so yep, we're good.
Yeah. Well, and again, it comes back to schemas, right? It's all about our understanding of the world and who we are in the world. Mm-hmm. And when things happen to us, again, two people can experience the same event and have completely different reactions to it. And a big part of that is, what are their schemas of the world? You know, someone watches a dog get hit by a car. Two people see that. One person could be traumatized for life because they value life so heavily in their schema.
Right.
The other person could have the mentality of, you know, this is just a part of life. You know, things die. And not saying that that's necessarily a good thing if they're just like, look at all the death going on, who cares? But one person's going to have a much more extreme reaction and embodiment of that event compared to someone with a different outlook.
But again, why are we worrying about comparing? Judgment is just a comparison.
Yeah.
We can judge things. Some judgment is good, but when we're judging things like why does Michael have such a dark sense of humor? Well, it's because things came at him. It could be the same things that came at me, but he just internalizes them different, right? Think of it like not so much the moment or the thing, but how things are imprinted on us. Now, people will judge that based on categories like, oh, weaker, stronger, composed drama queen or drama king, right? None of that stuff is helpful at all, because each person has a different level of internals. I don't mean literally our innards, right? I'm talking about safety and support. Each of us have different levels of maturity at different ages. There's no good measure for that either, or inner resources. So this goes back to something we talk about a lot. Do not compare yourself to, right?
Yeah.
A person A may have had someone they could turn to, a trusted person. Person B may have not had anyone, or didn't seem like they had anyone. One person could have internalized and had a language to meet these things in relationship with, to integrate. Another person may have not understood it at all. So
yeah. Well, and again, those little agreements, like the one I made with myself, like I won't talk about my day unless someone asks me about it. It's important that they want to know about it. And I went through a lot of bullying in middle school. I went through a lot of traumatic things in different phases of my childhood. And because of this little agreement I made with myself, this shift I had in my schema, I ended up internalizing all of it and never talking about it with my parents.
This was one of the
with my friends.
One of the things about the broken leg thing versus all the crazy, horrible stuff that should have wrecked me for life was that it wasn't the event, and this is where I had to come to. It wasn't that the breaking my leg like thousands of people do probably a day across the world out of 8 billion people, right? It wasn't that it was objectively terrible, because it did suck. You know, breaking your leg sucks. Having surgery sucks. I get it. I know. But that was the thing that was just too much for me to hold, right? I couldn't hold it. For whatever reason, and I'll probably never know why, Michael, why that was the thing, but none of that mattered in order for me to move forward and heal the crazy stuff that was happening, the nightmares and the stuff. So either it was like, too much to process, or I just couldn't, no matter how hard I tried, no matter how intelligent I am, no matter how much experience or wisdom I had, I just could not make sense of it. Right? I used to think I was invincible and unbreakable because I had cheated death more times than I could care to.
Yeah. Well, and I can imagine just having your life come to a complete halt like that, the helplessness, the feeling, you probably being someone who does not like to offload your problems on other people, being in a situation where you need to ask for help for things, like, that's real.
Like basic things, dude. Like basic things. I won't get into it, but because it's probably not appropriate for this kind of show, but it was just things that you take for granted. I'll just leave it at that. But anyways, it was, again, it was something inside of me finally gave out of all the stuff. And maybe it was the stacking of all the horrible things. And this was just the straw that broke the camel's back, as they say. But that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because I now have to either take this on, face it, and integrate and heal, or I could just find myself in an endless loop of suffering, right? And there is a wisdom here I just want to point out. There is a wisdom here in these survival instincts, these survival reactions. There is wisdom. It does it with the wisdom for life, right? It's not perfect wisdom. It's not wisdoms that you can find in a book. It's not, something you're going to find in the Tao Te Ching directly. It's not that kind of wisdom. It's survival wisdom and instinct, something we talked about on a few shows ago. Yeah. So it's not bad. It's just what happens. And the sooner we can come to terms with that And face it, the sooner we can start that road to healing.
Right. Well, I think this touches on really one of the most important lessons to take away from this episode is that it's these small moments. What happens is we go through this sensation of overwhelm, and our nervous system logs this event as traumatic. It logs it as something to be aware of. And the way you respond is often how the nervous system is going to trigger and tell you how to respond again.
Right.
The nervous system remembers overwhelm, not logic.
Mm-hmm.
And so you could have dropped a bowling ball on your foot, broke your foot, and the pain was so excruciating that you remember that always. So you go bowling again, you pick up the bowling ball, and you're just like, I can't do this. I don't trust this bowling ball. Your nervous system gets activated, takes you back to that day, and logic goes out the window because what it knows is that bowling ball is going to break your foot.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's a stigma around mental illness, right? There's a stigma, and we're taught that we're taught, or we think, or both, that it has to be something extreme, something obvious, something that looks bad enough from the outside that other people would agree, man, he should be messed up over this, right? But it's not those moments that do the greatest damage. It's those tiny little moments. They look small. They could be a look or a tone or a sentence, a moment of being ignored, as you shared, being bullied or shamed, being left alone when you needed just some damn comfort. You needed someone to sit with you.
Yeah. I think that's one of the issues. We have so much isolation going on with men, is they had so many instances where they were rejected, or something bad happened in a relationship, or just whatever happened in school. And yeah, they suck it up, they push through it, but they end up internalizing all these narratives because they never had anyone to talk about. The most important part of relationships are social mirrors. This is what any relationship in your life is. And when you talk about what's going on in your head, you're able to articulate it, and they're able to reflect back to you either, you know, you might be onto something there, or hey, I think you're going down a rabbit hole that isn't true. I don't think that's true about you at all.
Right, because that brings us to real or perceived danger. They're both accepted within the body. Doesn't actually have to be something that's actually real, that's actually happening.
Well, it's like catastrophizing, right? How many of us let our minds take us to a worst case scenario? We are living through the worst case scenario before anything even happens. And 99% of the time, that's not even what happens.
Right, yeah, right. So we adapt. We tighten up, we numb, we disconnect, which is the big theme here. We're disconnected, right? Because we don't feel like, you know, we feel like I'm alone in this. I guess I got to handle this myself type things. But I want to point out to you, Michael, your body does not care or remember or even understand explanations.
Right.
It does not remember your logic or your reasoning. It doesn't even give a crap about what should have happened. It just understands that overwhelm. Will remember energetically, it remembers that confusion. Energetically, it remembers that helplessness.
Yeah. I mean, that is how survival responses come to be, is because your nervous system picks one style or another, and it's, you know, nature versus nurture, right? Sometimes it's something that's taught to us. Sometimes it's something that's just how our genetics are laid out. Mm-hmm. And we learn that, you know, if I'm being attacked right now, it's better to freeze or better to run away. Maybe it's better to people please, and I won't have to worry about being under fire or being a problem.
And that's why in the way of Ashla, we look at these things as imprints. We prefer to use the word imprint because it could be a flash in the pan, just a flash. It could be so fast that you don't even see it. And a lot of times we don't. We don't see it in a way that we can understand it or call it out when it happens. We just see it when it ruminates.
No, I love that visualization too, because that's exactly what it is. It's an imprint on your soul. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't mean that it has to be there forever, but the more you can understand these little events that left these imprints on you, the more you can understand why you show up in the world the way you do. And you can start taking action to start correcting the behaviors that are self-sabotaging.
Yeah. There's an axiom I'm thinking of. Let's see if you can guess which one it is.
Oh, I'm not sure at all.
You don't know? To tolerate lesser things.
Tolerate lesser things.
To tolerate lesser things is wise and kindly.
How does this relate?
Well, because it's the little things that will build up and stack into these much larger problems. And you know what? For a lot of us, it doesn't come to bear. The check doesn't come due until we're much older, right? So
yeah, again, learning to be a good child, being a good kid through my whole childhood, it let me get away with a lot of crap that my parents were never privy to. I was able to be a free agent. I was the lost boy. I lived in my bedroom. And as a kid, I loved that. But now that I'm an adult, I remember this transition I had where I finally was out of school, I was working, and it's like I am so far behind socially and just cognitively because I struggled so much in school than so many of my peers because I was living this delusional life of just playing video games and watching TV and all these things. That chick came due.
yeah, it does. So that axiom is to tolerate lesser things is wise and kindly, as this cultivates inner strength, calm, and patience. We have to remember that this disconnect that we're experiencing is crushing us if we're not careful. Right? This goes back to making sure that we understand we are connected, even when we're going through this bad stuff. We are connected, and we are bound to the entirety of the universe, period. It literally surrounds and penetrates all things. And if all things are made of energy, right? You following? And all energy is bound together, then what happens to one happens to all in one way or the other. So we are connected. Every thought, every whisper, every action creates ripples throughout the entirety of the universe. We just don't see where they go. And if we're disconnecting, if we're isolating, then we are we think we're cutting ourselves off from all these feelings and all these things. But really, we're just putting out different vibes out there. We're putting different energies. We're not cut off. You're never cut off. You're just putting out maybe a darker response, even if it doesn't look like it, right?
You know, it makes me think of that interview we had with Deepak, how he was talking about how like we lose certain levels of our voice because of these different things that get internalized. You know, vibration is so real. And I've always considered myself a high vibe guy. But passivity is just as low of a vibration as anger.
Yes, yeah. And we can't look at things like that.
Yeah, that's why the journey to wholeness, which is what this channel is all about, is so important. Because only through taking these parts, taking these incidences, and learning how to make ourselves be able to advocate for ourselves, being able to have hard conversations, being able to trust ourselves and have the courage to take the actions we need, to be resilient, but to also be honest and humble.
So everything we're talking about points to something that I'm going to gripe about it for a minute, if you'll allow me.
Indulge away.
These survival reactions are a form of intelligence, even a form of wisdom, as I said earlier. I get sick and tired of hearing about how pathological this stuff is. And this is what turns a lot of people off, right? One of the most harmful things that our modern language has done is teach people to see their survival patterns as something wrong with them. And we will then jump on that and we'll label ourselves, I'm avoidant, I'm too anxious, I'm controlling, I shut down, these things, blah, 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 right? But we say these things as if we're diagnosing ourselves, and they come across like judgments or verdicts. Like, yes, Michael, you are avoidant, and now you must be punished for being avoidant because we have leveled this at you. And then we take that, and it's like, well, I guess I was right. Something is broken inside of me. But we don't see it that way. Not in the way of Ashla. We understand that every survival reaction, every survival instinct, is a form of intelligence. Again, it's not a perfect intelligence. It's not something you're going to find in the greatest, most wonderful philosophy ever. It's not conscious intelligence for sure. It's adaptive intelligence. It's something hardwired into us. But it is a wisdom and this is what's amazing about the human system in totality. It's a wisdom that says, hey, I got you. I'm going to get you through this. You may not like how I get you through this, but I'm going to get you through it. So when I hear things like freeze is not a weakness. It's the body saying stillness is safer than movement right now. But we ruminate. Fawning is not actually dishonesty. You're not consciously lying to yourself, right? Or to others. It's the heart saying connection is safer than conflict. So I would rather just go along and get along than stand up for myself or whatever, right? Disassociation is not laziness. That's more like our spirit saying this is too much to feel all at once. too much. I'm being crushed here. Hypervigilance is not paranoia. It's our mind saying what? If I stay alert, and if I stay crazy alert, I can stop any harm that's ever going to come to me. Ever. And I don't believe control is in a lot of ways arrogance. It's just a lot of fear there. And what this fear says, if I can manage literally everything, nobody can hurt me. So that's kind of my gripe about the language that we all kind of use. And I think it turns off a lot of people because it doesn't speak to them where they are, right? Because at the end of the day, these are just responses and reactions to danger, either real or perceived. It's strategies for survival. And they were simply the best solution available at the moment. I don't care if you were 2 or if you're 80. That's what's going to happen.
I love how you laid those all out because it's true. These are not things that we need to judge in ourselves as inherently bad. And one thing I just want to piggyback off this with before I forget about it. I heard this from Courtney, and I love this. When we have these issues, when we tell ourselves, I am anxious, I am depressed, I am avoidant, all these different things, we are unconsciously labeling ourselves and ingraining that in our being.
We are. Yeah.
We need to look at it as something separate from ourselves. This is my anxiety.
Yes. It's actually worse than that. It gets worse than that, right? Because then we start manifesting a world, a reality that starts to
what you think about, you bring about, yeah.
Right. And that's Courtney DiMatteo. We've had her on the show a few times. You guys should check her out. Super smart, that one. Yeah, I like
Yeah,
Courtney.
and that's always stuck with me. I realize I get in these patterns. I've been realizing in my healing stage I'm going through this sort of depressive lull. And what it is it's just my nervous system's getting to baseline and everything sort of feels flat. And it's like I started off being like, man, I am depressed. Right. I am so depressed right now. And it's just like, no, this is just depression coming in for its season. This is the emotions I gotta feel for now, but this isn't me. This isn't something perpetually stuck on me forever.
Right.
And just that awareness alone is enough for me to create that distance so that I can process it, I can chew on it, I can experience it without it consuming me or becoming embodied.
Metaphysically speaking, I am is the name for the creator, right? Anything that follows I am is, with enough time and energy put into it, it becomes a creation. We must be very careful what we put after the words I am, because you will create whatever it is. It doesn't happen immediately because, as we know, you only create and you only manifest what you resonate with, right?
Yeah.
But go ahead and say that stuff enough times and you will resonate with it and it will become the reality.
Yeah.
And
I tell you what.
And no one else will be able to see it, but you will be living it for sure, 100%.
Well, we all know those people in our lives. I am just an anxious person. I am just lazy. A lot of people don't realize when they're going through that spew of things, but people will take it on as this is just who I am. I am just an angry person.
Who I am is a powerful creator, so be careful, my creators out there. Be very, very careful about how you speak your name into being, into existence.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, we can go on a whole ass tangent about that, but I'll leave it at that for me. I am is a powerful way to start the creation process. So be careful what you create. That's all I'll say for now.
So another good area to tap into. So once you have figured out what in your past has impacted you, which is the first part of shadow work, it's understanding what in our past made us into who we are now. Yeah. Then it's understanding the parts that formed during that instance. Yeah. For me, the parts that formed when I went through it when I didn't speak up about how my day was and how rough it was for me, the part that created the protector part was I'm safe if I don't communicate my problems. Mm-hmm. And the part it was protecting was the part that felt invalidated and not important. So I can protect this and not feel this again if I just don't try to bring up my problems. We got to look at the divide that happens within our psyche when we go through these events. Big T trauma or little T trauma.
Or whether you believe it's trauma or not. It's still going to happen.
Yeah. One way or another,
if you don't like that word, find a new word for it. But you need to understand this. If the word bothers you, find a new word, because I promise you it's very real for all of us.
It's all about, and that's how you'll know if an event was something that did have an impact on you. Just look at the divide. What changed in your personality? And that's where you can start doing this analysis, start understanding what these parts are. I went from being someone who wanted to talk about my issues to someone who didn't. All right, there's the cause and effect. First order principles, right? Here's the cause and effect. Now, what is it that stemmed from it? What was the divide in my psyche that then created this new persona on how I show up in life? That created this safety, this survival response.
Well, and this is another act of wisdom, because when something happens that overwhelms us, whether it's too much to feel or understand or too much to carry by ourselves or all at once or whatever, our system, our human being, us as human beings, do something very wise. We divide the load, don't we? And it's less of a fracturing, although that does happen. The longer you ignore it, that starts to happen, and splintering and fracturing. But it organizes things to protect you out of love. A part of you will step up to manage the danger, either real or perceived. A different part of you will step forward to manage the emotion. Another part of you will step forward to manage your relationships, for example. Another one may step up to manage your expectations, just as examples, not literally for all of us. It'll be different for each of us. And this is not because you're broken. It's because you are more resilient than you believe that you are, if you don't believe you're resilient. But here's where we get messed up. We have to remember that these parts of us are not personalities, right? They're not identities. They are roles. They are roles. Somebody's got to step up and protect Justin because he's over here just saying, nah, I'm fine. This is fine. Everything's fine. Right?
Yeah.
Well, my first wife pulled her crap with me, and I don't know how much of the story I shared with you guys in the last 100 episodes, but I'll just say, that was another time where, wow, what a clusterfuck that was. I didn't know what was up or down or left or right. I didn't know. I'm surprised I could still speak after some of that. Honestly, they came back to haunt me later because I pushed it down. Big, strong man, pushed it down, right? And then my second wife, Heather, who's been married to me for 25 years, had to deal with that, bear the brunt of that, right? And then eventually I did. But so these roles, we will divide ourselves into roles so that we can share the load. But at the end of the day, we can't identify with them. We have to realize that they're just parts of us trying to protect us and trying to help us hold things up. But at some point, we're going to have to deal with that, aren't we?
Yeah. Man, that resonated so much with me. I heard this the other day, and it's really stuck with me. It's like, the most important decision you'll make in your life is the partner you choose. And I think so many people do not embody that. I was guilty of that. I've been in so many messed up relationships, and I did my fair share in those relationships. But it's just like when you have attraction without compatibility, when you have lust over communication and reciprocity, relationships destroy people.
Yeah. That's why I think a lot of the esoteric traditions, old traditions, right? That's why they say, don't be lustful, don't be this and that. I think in part they're trying to help people build strong relationships so they can endure, because life was really hard then too. In a lot of ways harder because you went hungry a lot, or there was wars and famine and whatever. Yeah, it's very important.
Yeah, you see it so much. You have the guys going over the hot girl who ends up just destroying their lives, or you have the girls going over the bad guy. You know what I mean? And it's it's just this roller coaster that we've been trained to follow.
Well, because we're just going based on instinct, hormones and instinct, right? No one teaches us how to find good partners, because the only examples we have in life are the relationships that are already around us. And they either crumble or they explode or they are good. We don't get to see how those relationships were built. So we have no context. And I'm not sure anybody can teach the context very well, right? It's one of those things where I guess my best advice would be look for those red flags of incompatibility early and don't ignore them.
And take your time. Take your time with relationships.
The real advice I can give, because, looking back, I'm not even sure how I found the right one, to be honest with you, right?
I know what you mean.
And I think everybody knows what I'm talking about. That's why it's hard to find, the right one, because we don't even know what we need. We don't even know what we need for ourselves, let alone what's going to be compatible for each other. But one thing I will say, as I look back between my two big relationships, was that there were a lot more red flags early on in this one than this one. And I took my time.
You know, I heard another quote that I really liked was, red flags you ignore in the beginning will be the reasons you leave later. And it's just like, man, so many of my relationships, the big issues I had, I saw in the beginning, and it was just like, you know what? I can fix it out of them. This is something I can get used to.
And I think, I don't think any of them are listening, but I'm sure a lot of my exes would say that I was a red flag sometimes. And I will own that. I will admit that I probably was at times also the red flag. I look back at those and I could see where I was, and I learned to overcome those and not be those now for Heather. Right? So it's really a lot of live and learn. And I know that sounds like a cop-out answer, but it really is. It really is.
There's so many people that get out of relationships and they're just like, the reason that relationship went bad was all these issues with my ex. The best thing you can do is ask yourself, what was the part I played in this? How can I be a better partner? And yeah, your partner might have been majority of the issues with the relationship, but if you can just evaluate the part you play in it. For me, I was in a pretty abusive relationship for 7 years, but I could have done better advocating for myself and addressing my concerns in the relationship. Yeah. I could have left the relationship after I realized this wasn't for me. I stayed in it 6 years longer than I should have.
Right.
It's all these things that we need to evaluate. What was the part we played in our suffering? Now, coming back to these parts, I think one of the most important things to realize is that it's proof that there was something inside you trying to protect you. Mm-hmm. You know, often we don't trust, we judge these parts for being bad or being undesirable. And it's just like, yeah, this may not be something that is important to this season of your life anymore. But during the time, it was what you needed to get through that situation.
Yes, and I'll say, we don't do that here. We don't do that. We don't do that whole waging war on these parts. We don't silence them. We don't exile them, because we understand the way of Ashla. We put a lot of faith in the fact that we are connected. To love another is to love ourselves. To hate another is to hate ourselves. These things reverberate in and out, around us, bind us, right? So we don't wage war on these things. We don't try to shut them up. We certainly don't try to banish them to the Badlands, because you can't. You're just going to turn them into shadows. We invite them into relationship. We sit with ourselves. We sit with them. We listen as best we can. We are grateful for what they protected in us, right? Hell, thank them for their damn service, Michael.
Yep.
And then with patience and presence, we teach them that the world is different now. Our hearts, look at all the stuff you got through to get to here right now. Your heart is stronger. Your wisdom is here now. It's available to you. You have tons of support, both inside and outside of yourself, right?
Yeah.
They don't have these different parts. It's time to integrate. It's time to create some integrity. Integrity as in whole. Because they don't have to carry these different parts alone. You carry it together in relationship. Yep. That is what integration is, not this whole getting rid of things. This isn't stuff you donate to freaking Goodwill, okay? This is very important stuff. You got to integrate. You can't get rid of it. You can't give it away. You can create this discord and this stuff in others if you try really hard, but then you're kind of an asshole, so don't do that. But, you know, the whole misery loves company thing. Healing is never about dismantling yourself to change the parts. Going back to the interview with Brent the other day, he likens all this as looking at ourselves as a computer, where we both have hardware, we have the parts, the actual physical parts, and we have the software. You can't heal yourself in this way, what's happening inside you, by dismantling yourself. There are no other parts you can stick on yourself.
Yeah.
You have to address it at the level of the code, at the level of the subconscious, the level of memory that's stored in here. Remember, it's just not our brains. Our hearts share the same kind of cells as our brain, and our gut shares the same kind of cells as our brain. So we have memory here, here, and here. We do. We have to address that.
Yeah. If we don't address it either, I mean, it's the reason we are doing this episode in general is because how important it is to understand the moments in our past and the things that came of those moments impacted us so that we can start making the changes we need to become who we want to be. And minimizing is the fastest way to make sure that these things follow you through life.
Yeah.
You know, when we start to minimize our trauma, it creates a second wound. When we tell ourselves that wasn't bad, when we tell ourselves something wasn't bad, we end up invalidating these sensations that happen within us, which gives them an even louder voice. You know, often the trauma we experience, when we're able to listen to our bodies, we can pause and respond to it. But if we try to shove it down, it becomes reactive real quick.
Yeah.
It doesn't calm the body. It just reinforces the survival response.
That's how you grow your shadow.
Yep.
Minimizing is the fastest way to grow that shadow. Because it's like, still, nobody's listening to me. Still, nobody is giving me what I need. I can't even give myself what I need. What kind of crap is this? Right? It's almost like you're telling yourself what you're experiencing, whether anybody else believes it's real or not, it's real to you, but it's not important enough to be addressed.
Yeah.
The
and that
body
energy
does not feel
will
comforted.
transmute.
What's that?
That energy will transmute.
It just grows the shadow, man. It turns it into bad energy.
No, I think about that
Yeah.
rough relationship I was in for 7 years, and it's like, I've always felt anger was a bad emotion, so I've always repressed it.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens when you repress anger? It becomes resentment, which is
Yeah.
far more toxic than anger,
Yeah.
than an outburst.
Yeah. Yeah, because it sticks around, man. Oh, you don't want me around? I'm just gonna be around now. You know. You can't shun or shame or banish your shadow. You can grow it though if you're careful. If you really try hard. Actually, it's not hard to grow the shadow, is it? Just do these things. Allow yourself to feel unseen. Allow yourself to feel unsafe. You'll grow that shadow, and then as you're fond of saying, that monster that was little and small enough you could deal with it becomes a much bigger demon, much bigger shadow. The more we do this. Because you're right, invalidating these things does not calm the nervous system. It activates it. You're just reinforcing all the stuff that you were trying to heal from.
Yeah. Well, and it's crazy, a lot of these different emotions. I feel I'm one of the extreme cases when it comes to anger, because I've spent the last 2 years trying to learn how to feel and process anger. And it feels like I'm trying to learn a new freaking language.
Which one hurts more? That first wound, the thing that happened, or the second wound, being told by others or by yourself, really, that stop it. It doesn't matter. It's over with. It's in the past. Which one hurts more, do you think?
You know, I look at it as that first wound was like the knife being shoved into you. That was probably the most painful part. But afterwards, the rejection of it is the sawing inside, the back and forth inside. And over a long period of time, it's definitely so much worse. Yeah. Again, learning how to feel anger. It is viscerally uncomfortable whenever anger comes up in me. And when it tries to do what it's always done and become a different emotion. Anxiety inside of me. I'm a highly anxious person. And a lot of that anxiety is stored anger. It is rejected anger then turned inwards. And now I'm having to, when it comes up, especially when it starts to shift, it's like, no, let the emotion be felt. Do not judge it. Find ways to process. I got to go on a drive and scream in the car for a few minutes. Do it.
That's a trend that I've seen lately on YouTube Shorts and TikToks. People are going out and finding places to just scream.
Hey, somatics.
Listen, man, if I'm out hiking somewhere and someone does that, it's going to scare the crap out of me. I'm going to be like, oh, what the hell's happening? You know,
I saw one of those videos where a girl went to the top of the mountain and she just screamed, and there was a guy taking a crap behind a tree, like 5 trees in front, and he just jumps out with his pants down and tumbles down the hill.
God. Let me ask you another question. On the path of healing, not just on the path of Ashla or the path of light, but on the path of healing, how important is truth and trust?
It's vital. Truth is what gives us clarity. You know, again, it's like I never thought I had any issues. That's because I was lying to myself.
Yeah.
I always thought my insecurities were just a part of who I am. I'm just going to carry these on. There's no changing them. But the truth was, I was running from a lot of stuff I had gone through. And that I could fix my insecurities and become whole. Learn to advocate for myself. Learn to speak up when things are wrong.
Yeah. So by minimizing, we are teaching ourselves literally at the root energetic level, that truth is inconvenient. That trust is just an afterthought. Trust is just a luxury people have. Because if you're allowing yourself to believe that your tears are excessive, or that you're whining, or that you're weak, or that you feel embarrassed, or that your needs are a burden, how on earth can you not only heal, but how can you grow in that kind of soil? You can't. We must make truth and trust at the very center of all this work.
You know, as we were talking about how like the shadow grows, you know, think of how many old people you've met that are just bitter and sour, and I'll bet you most of them actually were fairly positive when they were your age. What happened? It accumulated. Trust got ruined, and then it spread to everybody else in their life. Yeah. All these different events.
The foundation of peace is trust, period. There's no, right? Without trust, there's no peace. And without truth, there is no path forward. We must have those. That's often the hardest part.
When it comes to the events we go through in life, it's not memory, it's a pattern that has remained. It is, again, the same systems firing off over and over again in the same situations. We know that one of the reasons we attract the same kind of partners over and over again. We are creatures of habit. We are creatures of pattern. Life is patterns. You know, that's one of the things that blew my mind the most when I got into spirituality. Fucking Fibonacci and all that. It's just everything is a repeated pattern. And when we heal, we ascend patterns. We get into new patterns. But the more you understand patterns in your life, the more self-mastery you can have. Yeah. From habits to routines to building the life you want, but also understanding why you do what you do, especially the parts you feel you can't control. You know, you look at addiction and how it's something that is so it's permeating throughout every major city, any small cities. Like it is rampant. Yeah. And the big reason is a pattern got created on how to cope with something. And I think we all suffer from addiction to some level or another, whether it's doom scrolling, television, sugar, you name it.
Yeah. Oh, we do. And that's another thing. That's a whole other topic, but addiction is something that gets minimized that causes greater harm than the addiction itself too. But this takes me back to why I call it an imprint, because it's not something that you can see. You know, I mean, we know we can change habits. We know we can change the patterns. But if it's imprinted, we don't often see those imprints too. So, but trauma does not live in the memory; it lives in the reflex. I would say, it lives in the way
that's a very adequate way to say
when your body tightens up, right? Even when nothing's actually wrong, that perceived danger. You could see it in the way that you close down when someone gets close to you emotionally, and you're like, nope, danger, danger, danger. It's in the way that your mind prepares for danger, super hypervigilance, and you're just like, oh, what's happening? Which leads itself to a lot of other problems. We see that a lot in today's day and age, where we become obsessed with little tiny bits of information and we just run with it. We just dig these big rabbit holes to something that doesn't actually exist. But you're right. It's not in the story. It's not in the memory. It's in the pattern. The story is something that you just remember. The pattern is something you live, right?
Yep.
Over and over and over again. And you're not even choosing it. It's just doing it.
Well, and again, it's just when you start to look at these things, one of the next steps in recovering from them is just understanding trigger and response. It's the pattern that happens. You know, someone yells at me, I shut down. What can I do about that? How can I interrupt that pattern when someone yells at me? I'm going to tell them, give me a minute, try to interrupt that pattern from happening. And that's the best thing you can do with all these different things. All things operate off of trigger response. You know, bad habits, addictions, all right? I'm bored. I'm going to grab ice cream out of the fridge.
One thing I do is when someone gets out of a line with me by yelling at me or disrespect me or something, I'll look them right in the eye and say, did that come out the way you intended it to? I just want to be clear here. I want to make sure I understand. Are you coming at me this way? Is that what you meant to do, right? Or did you hear the way that came out of your mouth? Because to me, it looked like you were being this, and this. Not sure that was your intention, right? You're giving them the power of the pause for a minute to kind of rethink. Did I just say this to this guy? Should I have said it to this guy? I'm not trying to be a badass here, but I'm saying, if you come at me sideways, I'm going to give you a moment to kind of reel that back in, because maybe, just maybe, that's not what you meant. Now, if that's what you meant, then we got to go from there, right? But at least I know, and at least you know too that this is your intent. But when people shout at me, I say, "Hold up, did you mean for that to come out that way? I just want to make sure we're on the same page here."
I like that.
I want to make sure, because I don't want to react to something that's now went from 0 to 100, because maybe that's a problem with them, and it's not actually something that has to do with me, and I don't want to react in a way that is not appropriate. So, because if we go to blows, we go to fists over something that wasn't actually meant to be that way, it gives us both a chance not to get punched in the face. It gives us both a chance not to get our feelings hurt even further, right? And that's why, we've talked about communication before, but when you're communicating through words, through written words or typed words, whole lot different thing, because you have to try to guess the inflection. You have to kind of guess unless they're throwing a bunch of emojis in there, right, or something. But you really got to ask, did you mean for that to come out that way? You and I had a thing one time where you had misunderstood something I said, and then we got, I wouldn't say we got heated, but we got really out of sync, right? Remember when we had lunch that one day, and I said to you, okay, hold up, what is it that you're actually hearing me say? Because I want to make sure that, because in my mind, this should not have escalated this kind of response. So I'm going to pause this for a second and make sure that we're on the same page, right? And of course we did, and guess what? Everything was fine.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's
exactly.
Because most
that's
times
why communication is so important, right?
Right. Well, because most times things are fine, even if I'm upset with somebody, right? If I have the energy to feel upset with you, it means I love you. It means I care about you. If I didn't care about you, we wouldn't be talking, right? So I want to make sure I get it right, because maybe there's something, maybe I'm reacting to something, maybe I'm reacting to a trigger or a past thing. And I want to make sure that not only am I pausing you, but I'm pausing me, so that we can resync, right?
Yeah,
and that's
crazy how effective that is.
Well, and we have to do that to ourselves too. That it's not just for two people talking. You do that to yourself too. Again, coming back to the power of the pause, because maybe your reaction is not what's appropriate at that time, and you give yourself a chance to really, really kind of contemplate: is anger appropriate here? If it is, let loose, my buddy. Let loose. Let it out. If it's not appropriate, then maybe it's time to go, okay, nope, anger is not a good thing here. What should I do? Okay, I'm just going to stand. I'm going to stand defensively, or do I stand openly, or do I? All these things matter, right? But the power of the pause helps us with that. Helps us with this stuff today too.
Yeah, I'll say that's like one of the reasons. Me and Allison, 3 years, we've never had a fight, and our biggest reason is because we have these hard conversations. One of us gets triggered or activated when there's a misunderstanding. We'll talk it out. It'll be like, hang on, I don't think you're upset about what you say you're upset about. Let's get to the bottom of what's really going on.
Yeah. Yep.
And I think this ties into one of the most important parts. How can we start really integrating our true selves? How making these parts that separated come back together? And it's safety. And it doesn't necessarily mean keep yourself in a bubble. It means teaching your nervous system that the danger you once felt is not there. It's being able to show when you get triggered, when you get activated, you're in the middle of that heat of the moment. Your parents are yelling at you, you lock up because you feel helpless as a child. But someone's doing that to you as an adult, you're not as helpless as you were then. You can show your nervous system, hey, I can de-escalate this. I can stand up for myself, and there's not going to be consequences.
Yeah. This is another one of the tragedies of the whole modern healing scene. And by modern, I'm talking like 20, 30 years. There's a big gap there, but a range there. But these are things that I have seen with my own eyes, and I've heard with my own ears. To heal, you must conquer fear. Conquer it. Like Leonidas, conquer it. We're taught to overpower our doubt. Just choke it out. You got to shh with your insecurity. Silence it. Or one of my favorites. You need to rise above the pain. Just rise above it. It's down here. Just rise above it. Or in a show that you and I did a few shows back, we're taught to outthink our emotion. Just outthink it.
Yeah.
Right? These things sound strong and disciplined and very spiritual, but most of the time it's just another form of punches we take to ourselves. but we're punching ourselves on the inside. You do not heal by dominating wounded parts of yourself. You just grow in a shadow. You do not heal, Michael, by arguing with your fear, bargaining and arguing and having these blowouts with your fear. You're just creating more shadow. You cannot shame your sensitivity into submission, Michael.
Yeah.
You're just what? What are you doing? You're just creating more shadow.
You know?
So, because look, you cannot force things into trust. And if something's not true, it's simply not true. It can never be not true or true if it's not, right? This goes back to truth and trust at the center of this. You cannot force things into trust. There will never be trust there if you use force.
Well, and I think, again, it's people want that get better quick pill, right?
Mm-hmm.
But true change happens through diligence, persistence. It happens through practice. Practice, practice, practice. It's going to be messy the first time. It's going to be messy the second, third, fourth, fifth time. But you're going to see as that dial slowly starts to change. As you slowly teach your nervous system, I got this.
Yeah.
Because that's really what our nervous systems want, is to know that you can handle this.
This truth permeates all of existence, all of creation. Force creates resistance every single time. Every single time. Force creates resistance. I want you to think of it like this. Let me ask you some questions. Just quick questions. When someone pressures you, do you open up or do you close off? No, go ahead and answer. Go ahead and answer these questions.
You're asking me. Okay, perfect. Yeah. No, yeah. I close up.
Okay, yeah, we all do. I don't care who you are. We all do. When someone listens to you genuinely, do you open up or close?
I open up.
You open up. Well, that's how the inside works too. Healing is not a battle. It is a relationship built on patience and honesty and presence. You sit with what hurts. You listen without urgency or panic, right? And you respond to these things without looking for a way to punish it. And this is what starts to retrain this part of us, this nervous system, our reactions. No parts disappear into the ether. We come back together inside.
You know, trauma doesn't mean you're broken. It means your system adapted under pressure. The goal isn't to erase what happened or judge how you respond. It's to help your body learn that it no longer has to survive the same way. Healing begins when the nervous system feels believed, feels heard, and also feels like it can count on you. Do you have any parting words before we get into affirmations?
Yeah, I just want to share just some quick kind of takeaways from today's show and some things that you can start to think about while you're going through this process. Okay? Everything we've shared in this episode really means very little if it doesn't change how you relate to yourself, right? Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean tomorrow morning or 5 minutes from now. Healing is not a philosophy. It is a practice. Just like the buildup of shadow happens in the small, quiet moments, so does healing. Okay? So I just want people to take away something today with something real, something they can walk home with, take home with them. Number one, stop comparing yourself and your pain and your stories to other people's stories. When you compare, you're telling yourself that you want to be erased. You're erasing what actually happened to you. You can't do that. It just creates shadow. When you tell others that you had it worse, what you're really saying is, my experience doesn't deserve any attention. Second thing, begin noticing when you have these automatic survival responses, these reactions. Pay attention to what shows up under pressure. Michael gave you a good example. When he gets yelled at, right? You gotta, oh crap, everything goes danger, danger, danger. Pay attention to what shows up when you're under pressure. This is why we always say we grow and we heal, and we're built in a forge where there's heat and pressure. That's where we really, really come through, right? It's where we really build ourselves up. You know, do you shut down? Do you over-explain? Do you become overly agreeable? Withdrawing, all the things. Notice what you're doing. Every pattern, every reaction is a message. We have to understand it that way. Third, replace that self-judgment with what, Michael?
Compassion.
Compassion. Curiosity. When something in you reacts strongly, try asking yourself, be curious. Why am I feeling this way, and what is it trying to protect? What did I not learn from that moment where the pain started? Why am I reopening these wounds? Because I didn't learn from that, right? Be curious. What am I afraid of is going to happen now? Type of thing. Curiosity will open doors that criticism slams shut in your face. Be curious. Fourth, remember that every part that formed for a good reason. Nothing about you inside is random, but also nothing is immoral or evil or broken. Nothing inside you is too much for you or for others. This is why it does these things. Every response was an answer to some kind of danger. Don't try to erase that. Honor that. This is where we can teach ourselves that the world is different now. I'm different now. Look what all the stuff I came through. Now I'm powerful, I'm strong and resilient, and I am the things now that I needed to be then. So I'm going to deal with this now. I'm not going to worry about it anymore as far as trying to fix it then. I got to fix it now. Presence over perfection. Presence is power, right? And then the last thing is focus on creating safety now in the moment, not trying to correct the past. Just to piggyback off number 4. You cannot rewrite the yesterday, but you can change today by creating things like boundaries and supportive relationships, giving yourself quiet places to sit and be, grounding your routines, right? Giving yourself good habits, making sure that you rest when it's time to rest. Don't burn yourself out. And talk to yourself in a truthful, honest way. You'll start to understand that your life is safer now. It can be. You don't have to worry. You don't have to try to fix things that happened. We deal with them now because now is where we are. So, and if you do these things faithfully and honestly, you will do more healing than any amount of self-judgment, self-criticism, self-analysis. And here, of course, in the way of Ashla, we do not chase perfection. We cultivate presence. That's where we are. And then presence is what transforms patterns into a more peaceful life. So my call of action, Michael, if this conversation resonated with you, I'm going to invite you to do one simple thing this week. Choose one moment each day to treat yourself with the same compassion you would offer someone else who was in your shoes. Give yourself the compassion that you give others, Michael. True compassion. When you notice a reaction, we do what? Pause. When you notice self-judgment, pause. When you notice fear, pause and listen. Let that be your practice every day. And if this episode supported you in any way, or you know someone who it might, let us know. Leave a review, subscribe, leave us comments. We love our community of people who are good students. They're very quiet students, Michael. But, let us know. And let us know what kinds of things we should talk about. If we're not hitting on a specific thing that you want us to talk about, let us know in the comments, wherever this stuff is posted. They all allow comments, I think. But yep. That's what I want to leave everybody with today.
Beautiful. For affirmations today, my trauma is valid even if I don't think it should have affected me this much. My nervous system adapted to protect me, not to harm me. I do not need to minimize my experience to deserve healing. The parts of me that formed were intelligent responses to overwhelm. I am allowed to honor what happened inside me, not just what happened externally. For our journaling prompts today, what experiences do I tend to dismiss or minimize, even though my body still reacts to them? What survival responses or parts do I recognize in myself today? Today. If these parts form to protect me, what might they need now to feel safer? And this one's important, because when we start to identify what these parts are, we can start to give them the reassurance they need so that they can open up the space for us to become something new. Thank you so much for joining us today. Again, like Justin said, if you enjoyed this episode, please reach out, give us some comments. Let's have a discussion about this, or let us know what you want to talk about. If you think this episode could help someone you know, share it. Also, like, comment, subscribe, because the more we get that, the more we can give you more content. Check us out on all the different pages. YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find us.
And the greatest website ever.
Of course, newashla.com. With love and gratitude, ad lucem.
Ad lucem.